Transient hypoglycemia is associated with changes in the maternal metabolism that may include factors related to the intrapartum administration of glucose, the glucose infusion that I discussed in the beginning, drug treatment in the mother that may be like terbutaline, ritodrine, propranolol for various reasons, oral hypoglycemic agents for obvious reasons, and diabetes in pregnancy where the infant of diabetic mother is affected. So this is an important category. We have to remember that the infant of diabetic mother, depending on the insulin-dependent diabetes versus the gestational diabetes, the presentation is different. We have association with neonatal problems like idiopathic or failure to adapt, intrauterine growth restriction, birth asphyxia. We will discuss next as to why it's important. Infection, of course, affects the ability of the baby to handle stress, and hypothermia, hyperviscosity. Erythroblastoma fetalis is not commonly seen these days, but when the blood breaks down, the heme has a insulin stimulating effect. So these babies are hyperinsulinemic as well. And we have iatrogenic causes, congenital cardiac malformations, and so on. So when we look at causes, I mean, obviously risk factors come in at the same time. Preterm and SGN units have lower glycogen and fat stores than the full-term babies, and they also have possibly, especially in the growth-restricted babies, they have possibly higher insulin levels as well. So you have a double risk. And the reason we continue monitoring the sugar longer in the preterm and SGA babies is for similar reasons, because their store is less. The infant of diabetic mothers often secrete higher amounts of insulin because they've been exposed to excess fetal glucose concentration. And because they have been having fluctuations and exposure to excess, they also have a surge. So the fluctuations, that's why we should avoid the bolus when we treat hypoglycemia. As far as possible, have it smooth. And when you're managing the hypoglycemia, try to continue feeding in the background because you want a smooth background. If there is fluctuations of significance, the insulin may surge because whenever you disturb this balance, the insulin is going to be released fast in these babies because the reaction is excessive. If the mother received IV fluid and those treated with hypoglycemic agents, birth asphyxia, obviously the baby is already stressed. They have already consumed a lot of their fuel. So glycogen is mostly burnt out because they are using a very energy inefficient process of anaerobic metabolism. So by the time the baby is born, their sources are reduced. The same applies to babies who are symptomatic with respiratory distress and so on, because they are consuming far more energy for their work of breathing. So you have to account for that when you monitor these babies. So birth asphyxia associated with hypoglycemia increases the risk of neurodevelopmental handicap about 18 times. So it's a very important factor to avoid. So be careful about the sugar control in the birth asphyxiated babies. You may have transient hyperglycemia even in these babies due to the stress. Don't be caught off guard. So both hyperthermia and hypoglycemia should be avoided in asphyxia. So the American Academy defines risk factors in a simplistic way. We have preterm babies, term babies born to mothers with diabetes, small for gestational age and large for gestational age. So the large for gestational age is an overrated category. We don't see much of symptomatic hypoglycemia in the well babies, but there is a small subgroup of the large for gestational age babies who may be hyperinsulinemic. So that is the reason we are targeting these. But if you have a normal looking baby who is feeding well and one or two sugars are normal, you are okay with these groups. But the smaller babies are the ones you need to make sure the feeding support is good and they are monitored for a longer time, as we will see in the chart. The Pediatric Endocrine Society, they defined a little more detailed risk factors. So we have the same as the AAP risk factors, and we also include post-mature delivery. We have a family history of genetic forms of hypoglycemia, such as congenital hyperinsulinism or hypopituitarism. We have congenital syndromes like Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, other conditions associated with abnormal phases like midline abnormalities and microphallus, which would go with hypopituitarism. Perinatal stress, we discussed, cesarean delivery, maternal PAH, all these affect the feeding establishing as well as the baby's condition, meconium aspiration, erythroblastosis. So they take a little more exhaustive risk factor assessment. So this is a typical infant of diabetic mother where we have macrosomia. The head is preserved because the reason the babies are macrosomic because insulin mimics IGF-1, which is a growth factor. and that affects the somatic growth, but not the brain growth. So the brain continues growing on a normal trajectory while the body size is more. So that's exactly the reason why you get shoulder dystocia as well, because the head is able to come out, but the body is big and it gets stuck. The other important factor about diabetic babies is hyperinsulinism is quite common in them, so we have to be watching them carefully. So this is a range of sizes of babies, from the growth restricted baby who may be SGA due to family factors, or he may be growth restricted. So we can't say, we have to look at all the factors as well. The IUGR baby is at higher risk. Of course, the premature baby at whatever gestation, we have to be more careful. So this is the typical phases we get with Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome. So both these babies are Beckwith-Wiedemann. We had one case 2 years ago uh, who had very typical features: hemihypertrophy, exomphalos, a very big tongue, and we had feeding difficulty in the baby as well. We had transient hyperinsulinism, which we managed with disoxide, and baby subsequently went home. So Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, as you know, is mostly due to genomic imprinting, and we have a high increased risk of cancer in later years. So if you have a large tongue, even the large tongue alone may be a methylation defect related factor. So we have to send the specific tests to rule out, because you have to monitor them for long-term risk of cancer. Micro penis, so you have to have the stretched measurement of the penis length. So make sure that you're measuring it properly. Less than 2.5 centimeters is suspect. You may do ophthalmology evaluation. You may do a eye check, a cranial ultrasound to look for other midline problems. If there are other factors like hypothyroidism or low sugar, you have to rule out. We had a case last year as well with the hypopituitarism, and the baby is doing well now.